hope everyone is doing wonderfully again on this gloomy Tuesday afternoon. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Today's video, which we're going to jump right into, is wholesaling. So wholesaling is something that a lot of the general public don't really even know about, which is funny. It was only a matter of a few years ago that I found out about it as well. But in the investing world, wholesaling can be an incredibly profitable and great way to make money without a whole lot of capital needed. And so I'm going to walk through a few examples as well as some stories and explain the whole concept a little bit so it makes it a little bit easier, and we'll go from there. So what the 5 points, first and foremost, we're going to talk about what is wholesaling. We're going to talk about the benefits of wholesaling. We're going to talk about the Mayo formula, okay, and is it something that can actually be attained? Next, we're going to talk about a quick example. We're going to run through just how simple numbers would look in a wholesale situation. We can actually share one that we did 3 days ago. So, and then last but not least, how to get started in wholesaling. Okay, so first and foremost, what is wholesaling? Wholesaling, simply put, is when you sell the contract on a property. And so to start at the beginning, if I'm a seller and I need to sell my property, and for some given reason I want a quick sale, maybe my house is super distressed, maybe for no reason at all, I just hate real estate agents, I don't care for them at all, maybe I just want to offload this property. There can be a number of reasons. Maybe it's a divorce scenario, you never know, where the two people just can't stand talking to each other and they want a quick, easy, one and done. So wholesaler is a true benefit because they take a lot of the guesswork out of the whole transaction. Wholesalers can often become very flexible in their closing. They can pay cash. There's no conditions on the offer. They don't have to revisit the property 50 times to take measurements. So those are some things that some sellers find very, very attractive. So if I'm a seller and I want to sell my property, I can call somebody and say, hey, are you willing to purchase my property? Cash, no problems. So that a wholesaler would come to the property, they sit down with the person, they go through the property, and they would assess the property as to what they would be willing to pay for the home. If the seller agrees to that price, they get it under contract. The wholesaler now owns a contract. So that contract is their rights to purchase that home, right? Now what a wholesaler will then do is they can take that property, or take that contract, that they have the rights to sell that property, and they can then sell the rights to that contract to somebody else. Now, there are a lot of rules within this wholesaling game. There's no bird dogging. They can't act as a real estate agent, but they can go find investors who are looking for opportunities, and they can wholesale the transaction over to them. Okay? They just can't act as a realtor. Very, very important point. You cannot bird dog within wholesaling. Right? And then if you do happen to have a license, then you can also just change up the contract and sell it or purchase it for yourself, or you can just list it for them as an exclusive listing. There's a lot of different options, but in wholesaling, you don't technically need a license because you are buying the rights to the contract yourself. So all you need is a small down payment, so to make sure that there's some sort of what's the word for it, where you have to put a deposit down on the property. And then you can take that contract and flip it over to another investor who'd pay you a little bit on top of it because the opportunity is good. So, for example, when properties are in a significantly distressed state, wholesaling can be a great way to offload a property from a seller's standpoint, and from the investor's standpoint, buy a property that is still undervalued. And in the meantime, the wholesaler, who's the middle guy, they still get a cut off the deal. So it's very lucrative in their standpoint too. So the real benefit to wholesaling when it comes to the investment world is, like, the number one benefit in my opinion is just very low cost to start up. There's not a whole lot of commitment. Unlike flipping a property where you have to close on the deal, then you also have to come up with the construction funding, then you have to hold the property, and after time has passed, now the property can then be sold and then you profit. Wholesaling, you actually don't have to put anything into the deal except for that initial deposit amount that goes to the lawyers. So you can set that deposit amount to $100 and then drop it off to that lawyer, or the seller's lawyer, and then you can then take that contract over to another person, sell it, make $10,000 difference, and you don't technically ever go on title. You don't have to close on the deal. when the future buyers close on the property, that's where the lawyers make the adjustment and you get a piece of the pie at closing. So super low startup costs, and that's a huge benefit to wholesaling. So a lot of these training programs that advocate, how to get started in real estate investing, because it's a great idea, but a lot of people don't really know where to start, and a lot of people don't have mass sums of money that they can just play with. So wholesaling is a great way to get started. The other benefit of wholesaling is that the truly successful wholesalers are actually like master marketers. So when you get started in wholesaling, you become good at the process of purchasing properties under value. You're actually looking for really good deals that are going to be attractive for investors. And that's a huge benefit when you're starting out, because if you decide to graduate from your wholesaling business and then become a flipper or become someone who's buying and renovating boring properties out, you already have a marketing system in place that can purchase these, so you can purchase these houses for yourself. It's a great way to get started in the entire investing business. So my piece of advice to anybody who will be getting started is learn how to wholesale, understand this process, and then go start marketing for deals. Because if you find a good deal, you'll be the hottest person in any sort of networking group. If you can hold up a contract and say, does anybody want this? And I'll take the difference kind of thing. Very good idea. So a lot of these different forums talk about the MAO, which is the maximum allowable offer. Because when you're going to wholesale, or you want to wholesale a property, you're literally going to the property and you're making sure you've checked your comparables and what is the market asking for these kind of properties. But there's a lot of moving parts that you have to be very careful of. So one formula that's a super easy way to just kind of get an idea of how do I calculate my maximum allowable offer is pretty straightforward. So if you have a purchase price is equal to your ARV, so this is your after repair value. So we know what an after repair value is going to be based on what comps of the same caliber home that are newly finished, what those are going to look like. All right, so let's say we have a bungalow on the Hamilton Mountain, is 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom upstairs, and the basement's unfinished. That's the state that we're going to go see it in. But then we also know that around there's properties that have finished basements, maybe they have an in-law suite, and we know what those values are selling for. We can start to establish what an ARV would be. And you can be sure to run a conservative ARV. That's okay, but just don't price yourself out of losing a lot of deals. I'll show you how the ARV actually, or the rest of the formula plays out. What the ARV does, you actually multiply this by 70%. Okay, so this is the first part of the formula here, but then you also minus your construction costs. Okay, so your purchase price, if you're going to buy a property as a wholesale, you're going to take the after repair value, so the future projected valuation of the property, you're going to multiply it by 70%, which is technically what a wholesaler's margin would be pre-flipping it to a potential investor, and then minusing the construction costs overall, which is going to get you an evaluated price point. Okay, so if we, for example, take a property that we're wondering what it's going to be worth, and we know that the after repair value of the home is, let's say, $100,000. So 100,000 times that by 70%, and let's say the construction costs on the entire property are going to be about 20 grand. So that we know that in order to purchase this property, that makes sense from a wholesaling standpoint, it's going to actually be 70K minus the 20K. Sorry, I forgot the K there. So our purchase price that we can put into this deal is going to be $50,000. Now I'm running with low numbers just to make it easy for people to kind of follow along with. But that's effectively where it is. But if we take a look here and we see an average property that we're already taking a 30% discount off of the ARV, those are very hard to come by. And not everyone can just snag a property for 30% under market value, right? Before construction costs are even in place. That's why it's challenging to market for these deals. And that's why not everybody wholesales. And that's why even the wholesalers that are in the business now, there's very few of them that are doing it at a very high level because there's not a lot of deals out there. If you think about it from a seller's standpoint, we're in a seller's market here in Hamilton. Somebody can list a dump on the market and it's gone in a week in multiple offers. So there's not a huge push for a lot of these sellers to go this route. But that being said, deals still happen because sometimes people don't want to go the traditional route, and wholesalers provide a different avenue. So it is a big bonus to sellers and us investors as well. So I always encourage it. Now, once again, this whole 70%, take it with a grain of salt. And the reason I say that is because, not that you shouldn't target this, but a lot of these big forums that express the Mayo calculation, they're sometimes coming from the States or different markets, right? This is a good guideline. But if you can make your numbers work and let's say that's 85%, then maybe that can work in your market, right? Just make sure that there's enough meat on the bone so that you as the wholesaler can sell the deal still at an attractive enough price that an investor is going to buy it because it's still worth the deal. That's a very, very important point to make, is that your wholesale price, you can't jack it up to fair market value because then, well, you could if you had a buyer, no problem. But the real good wholesalers are offering opportunities to investors, and that's where the real benefit is, okay? So that's just a very, very quick example of what the Mayo formula is. And that's why I wrote here in brackets, is it possible? In this market in Hamilton, it's very difficult, but I'd be lying to you if I say I didn't see it happen time and time and time again. So we had a recent deal take place in Hamilton where we actually brought the buyers into the deal. So we were still acting as the agents in this regard, but a wholesaler brought us an opportunity. It was perfect, right? So the deal itself, when the wholesaler picked it up off on the market, he grabbed the deal for $310,000. So that was the wholesaler's purchase price. Okay. Now, our wholesaler, he needs to make a little bit of money on this deal. So this is what he bought it for. So he said, Alex, Kaylee, I've got an opportunity here for you guys to purchase a property. It's not on the market. It's a 2.5-story property. Looks really good. We walked through it, and it was a really, really good deal. And he said, I'm offering this deal at $325,000. So he's offering this at $325,000. Now remember, this is not somebody that has a license. He came to us and said, listen, I've got an opportunity. Are you guys interested? And we came after him. So he wasn't marketing it or anything like that. So he went down the proper channels, and I definitely advise that whoever is getting into the wholesaling, make sure you take a look at that so you're following all the rules and you're doing it completely above board. So we really like working with this particular guy, so there's no problems there. So he, at the end of the day, is taking the difference, the delta here, the $15,000, and he's saying, this is my profit at the end of the day when this deal closes. So, perfect. Now, we look at this deal here, and for us, it wasn't the right timing for the property. It didn't matter, but we knew somebody who we thought this would be perfect for. So we called him up, and he said, perfect, I'd love to go see it. So us as agents actually got into an agency relationship with that particular buyer. Now, this is an added level, but we actually added our 2% or 2.5% commission onto the deal. So I think the total amount came to $335 or something like that at the finish line. So the final purchase price was equal to $335,000. This is before any renovations have taken place. So you see how it started to work its way down the line. Now, fair market value for this property, so the actual fair market value would have been closer to the $375K mark. That's an as-is, whereas condition. So the wholesaler, in order to become successful, had to buy this property at a steep enough discount that in this particular case, he could make his cut. He could flip it out to his network to see who would be looking for an opportunity like this. Then obviously we took our commission cut because we were working with the buyer, and they added it onto the purchase price. And then at the end of the day, the final purchase price is what's going to be divided up all the way down the line. Then for a property that still has a fair market value of $375,000 is still really, really cool. So here's a simple example, and this one literally just took place a few days ago. So got a couple other examples. If you guys are interested, I'm more than happy to share with you guys. So how do we get started in wholesaling? The most challenging, I brought this up a little bit earlier in the video too, the most challenging part about wholesaling is finding opportunities. Once again, when we're in such a competitive market and there's so many things going on, it's very difficult to find distressed properties that are willing to be realistic in what their sales price are. So if you can go and find people that are looking to offload their properties, Hamilton, even despite the lack of inventory that we have from like a real estate standpoint, do you know how many vacant homes exist out there? It's super surprising. And in any given market, there are homes that literally just sit there and do nothing, and they're rotting on the inside and the ceilings caving in. Sometimes people don't want to deal with these properties. Sometimes people have moved away to a different province and they completely neglected their properties. They just left them there because they don't know what to do with it. Right? So these are all opportunities that investors can really capitalize on. And if you don't have the money to do the work, to do the deal, don't worry. Find the opportunity, because the opportunity itself is worth money. Okay? So definitely look into wholesaling. It can be one of the most lucrative ways. I know people personally who have incredibly successful wholesaling businesses, and that's all they do. They just have an awesome investor database that they network with, and they have these deals they can pass along to them and make a ton of money this way. So if you have any more questions, definitely reach out. Hope everybody is doing well out there, and stay tuned for our next video. Cheers.